Hallelujah. Well, I'm already behind time, but that's okay. We always have time for the presence of God, right? Oh my goodness. We always have time for the presence of God, right? Didn't Maury do a great job? We're gonna be seeing, yeah, come on. We're gonna be seeing a few more people that coming up here, some different voices. You've heard Dennis, you've heard Murray, and so a few more doing some stuff with that. I wanted to reiterate next Sunday, well, we have more people coming in. Next Sunday is Dad's Day, Father's Day, and I understand that there's going to be a difference of what your experience with your dad was. You might not even know him, and so you might just be like, Father's Day is terrible because, you know, my dad was this, and so you think of it as a negative, but there's probably been hopefully a father figure in your life. And if not, we have some sitting, around here that could jump in. But dads, someone who's been a dad, it could be a brother, it could be uncle. We want to celebrate him next week. And the way we want to celebrate him, and Tanika announced it, is we are giving away a barbecue for two things. We're giving away kind of a portable one. I've been saying portable, but it's on wheels, so it can collapse down and move easier than big ones. But it's a smaller one. And then we have a charcoal Weber barbecue. And so we want everyone next week, I will be doing it. We are going to dress in our best dad outfit. So I already got, my fanny pack is finally going to get good use. And so socks, whatever, whoever dresses up, I got to put together the team. We're going to have some people judging. And so there's two requirements to get a barbecue. This is how you win it. And anyone can win it. There'll be one for the game or just for the dads or men that they can win the other one. But you got to come dressed up. And whoever dresses up the best, and then you got to give us your best dad joke. We'll have someone at the welcome booth, and they'll be collecting all the dad jokes. Dad jokes are the best. Rob sent me the answer. I already knew the joke, so I saw the answer, and I knew what the joke was, but why did the Kleenex dance across the table? Right? Well, that's the way I heard it. So why did the Kleenex dance across the table? Because he had a little boogie in it. Yeah? All right. So ones like that. Why can't a bicycle stand by itself? Because it's too tired. Some of you will get that later. Too tired? What? It's not just, anyways. The unicycle can't stand by itself. Never mind. All right. Dad jokes. And so a combination of the best dad outfit and the best dad joke's going to win a barbecue. That's it. I want to see this place full of, the only issue I thought is if somebody doesn't know and shows up who's a dad and wins, but they didn't mean to dress up. Some of you know who you are probably, right? Bob's like, I'm coming as myself. No. All right, so you can do it up whatever way, but kind of your best dad outfit, bring some dad jokes. We're going to have some fun with it. And then we're going to have a game. We did it a couple years back. Who remembers the one where we had 4 guys get up and they had to fold some laundry? They had to put a diaper on some dolls. The complete dad, right? So we had some of that, and then they had to put together some wood and use a drill and a hammer, and whoever got all that done first, we're giving away the Weber barbecue, charcoal barbecue for that. Hey, we should, I don't know. The barbecue is really good. I'm just going to run and get it. Let's see. Hopefully. It's just back here. That's all right, Maury. I think I got it. Oh, yeah, I got it. It's got wheels. If I break it on the way out, that's sad. So here's the charcoal. I've never used a charcoal barbecue, but this was a thing back in the day. So here it is, a Weber charcoal barbecue. It's going to come with a pack of briquettes. Is that what they're called? Man, that's nice. And then we got the other one. Maybe Maury will bring it out just so you can see. A couple barbecues there. There, that's it. I'll leave it there for now. So that's what's happening next Sunday. I also want to point out, I'll hopefully announce it at the end, but how many of you have been a part of us groups at all in the last year and a bit? Come on, show me your hand. All right. So what we're doing is we're taking a break coming up for us groups in the summer, but groups in the last year or so, put up your hand. All right, that's fair. Way more shy people. That's fine. That's fine. We also got questions for you. Man, it really feels like it's cutting in and out. That's really weird. Is it? That's not good. Check. There we go. Back. I don't know. Maybe I pinched something with doing this. We got questions for you too. So there's 2 sections on it. It's going to be at the welcome booth at the back after the service. We want to hear from you. Your feedback matters to us. It's questions about what have you liked, what haven't you liked, what would you like to see. If you haven't come, what would it take for you to want to come? All right, so the first page is directed to the first page and a half is directed towards those who've been coming. The last page is just a few questions for you. It'll take you about 5 minutes max unless you really stress over tests, and then it'll take you 30 minutes, but that's just depending on how you want to do it. But we really want to get that, and so if you're in groups, you can do it Tuesday if you come to groups. We did some of ours this Tuesday, but next Tuesday and the one after, we'll be handing them out. We want to get as much feedback as we can, and then we're going to try to meet together and figure out some things of what will actually everyone's looking for, and then pray into it and have a direction for next September. Is that all right? All right, now I'm really far behind. All right. So I'm starting a new series today, the next 3 Sundays. It's going to take us to the end of June. And as Tanika announced on July 3rd, I do believe, Shelly Christian's going to be ministering. I know you're only clapping like that because you haven't heard her before, but she's powerful. And she does it with such grace and with such love and joy. She did a communion here once recently, and it was amazing. I was like, I should stop doing communions. I'm doing it today, but if she was here, maybe I would have got her to do it. So it's going to be great. We have a good summer planned. But I'm starting a series today, and so we'll get into it. How many of you have felt like we were talking about, even in worship here, about God resting on us and the presence and the Spirit of God? But we kind of live in a culture that likes fast. Likes going fast, speed, kind of doing a lot. There's a movie series, I believe there's 10 of them now with a few bonus ones called The Fast and the Furious. 10. They should have stopped at, yeah, everyone says their name, right? 10 called The Fast and the Furious. And it's this idea that kind of getting more and done in less time. If you do it faster, the better. Filling your schedule, putting your kids in all sorts of things. Man, we have a lot of people that we know because our kids are in some things, and some of their kids are in so many things. All the parents do is just drive them around from event to event. And they're just filling it. They're going fast. They're going everywhere. You know, kids in activity, doing more things. And if you can do this, it's best for your business. It's going to be best for your kids because they're, getting their experience and everything like that. And then you're going to build your business faster. And it's a way to be more successful, and it'll ultimately be better for your family. And we've grown accustomed to fast a little bit. Now, COVID's kind of changed a bit, but we have fast food. I remember back in the day, there was a pizza place. It was like 39 minutes or your delivery or your pizza's free, right? Amazon, they changed the way to get things and have things delivered to you. Again, COVID's adjusted it, but it used to be Amazon Prime. That was like 2 days, right? I know that if you lived in Toronto or that area, you could order Amazon in the morning and get it delivered the same day. I ordered something in the morning and got it delivered the next morning. It just blew my mind. So fast, right? When you text somebody, you expect an answer in a fairly concise timeline. Do you remember back in the days where you phoned someone, left a message that everybody could hear the message in the house, and it went, "Toot, we are not at the home right now." And everyone, that was the message, and and then you waited and hoped they got the message. That was only the rich people who had that. We did not have that growing up. I remember our friends who had it, and I was just like, this is amazing. They got a message, and they could listen and return calls. And so if they weren't home, you didn't get a hold of them because you only had a phone at home. Maybe work. No caller ID, no way to know. And so it wasn't fast, but now you text someone, and if they don't respond within 3 minutes, something's wrong. Why don't you love me? Why are you ghosting me? And so this idea that this pulling everyone, and even if you don't like fast, culture sort of pulls you into this frantic pace. Drivers, you're going somewhere, 2-lane highway, and that person that has no business driving is in the left lane going slightly under the speed limit, and there's a car in the right lane, and you have no way to get by. And no matter how close you are on their bumper, they don't seem to get it, that the slow traffic should stay to the right. Anybody? Can I get a witness? Anybody, that person in the left lane going slow? Oh, a few of you are Bob's like, I'll own that. I'm going to be real, and then you conjure up all sorts of thoughts of what type of driver this is. I'm not going to say what it is, what you think of, but oh, they're probably this or that, and then you look and you're like, yeah, I was right, or oh man, they're just in the left lane, going 78 and an 80, and you're trying to make good time. Yeah, anyways, so we live in a culture that pulls you towards this, the frantic pace. And the fact that, a certain speed, a certain way of doing something, the fast and furious pace, if we do this, we do better in life, and it pulls us towards that. And so because of that, it kind of seems like this. If the pacing isn't racing, then you're not winning. If the pacing isn't racing, you're failing. You're getting behind. You're losing to somebody else. You're not going to make it as quick as someone else. Listen, there's nothing wrong with wanting to grind and work hard and grow. So I'm not saying be lazy. Go to the ant, thou sluggard. There's a verse in Proverbs that talks about that. There's nothing wrong with wanting to go after some things in life and succeed and try to win. How many of you like winning? How many of you like losing? Okay, I'm going to try again because there's all of you are here, so either you like winning or losing. So how many of you like winning? Okay, how many of you like losing? A couple people. You know what? That's not wrong. You can learn a lot through losing. Sometimes often more than winning. But there's nothing wrong than going through life and trying to win. Or the idea that life is kind of like a race and you're trying to get somewhere. There's a goal in mind, there's a finish line, or there's a progression. Paul addresses this in 1 Corinthians 9:24 to the church at Corinth. He references something like this when he says this, "Do you not know that those who run in a race all run?" So we're kind of going through something. We're in a race, we're going through life. And it says this, but only one receives the prize. I don't know about you, but we've changed a lot in a few thousand years. Because I think what Paul's saying here is there's no consolation trophies. There's no awards for participation. Anyways, wherever you land on that, I understand why we do some of that. We've included some more of that. But Paul's saying, he goes, but only one receives the prize, right? There's only one real winner. We've got some hockey and basketball coming down to the finals. There's going to be one winner. But he says this, run in such a way that you may win. Run in such a way that you win. So Paul says it's okay to do life in such a way that you're going to succeed, that you're going to win. But let me tell you something. There's a certain pace that helps you win certain races. I did some 200 and 400 meter races growing up, 100 meters. 400 was the one I hated the most because to me it was a full-out sprint. But it was a long, full-out sprint. And we were basketball-predominant school, but for some reason, they thought it was important that we did track as well. And I remember having a lot of tension with my basketball coach around track, because we would go hard training for basketball for like 9.5 months out of the year, and then we had 2 weeks to turn ourselves around and try to train for track and race against people who were doing it all year round. And I remember 400-meter training was life, because Tanika always says, love you to life, and I like that. I was going to say it's deathly. Like, you felt like, I don't know, it was crazy. But the pace at which you run a 200 or a 400 meter is not the same pace at which you run a 2-mile race. Although some in the Olympics now, I think, can just sprint those things. I don't know how they do it. So let's say maybe a 20-kilometer race. If your pacing is the same, if you're frantic going all out in a 200, that's fine. But if you're trying that in a 20-kilometer race, you're going to have some issues. So there's ways to run races. There's ways to do life. There's ways to go through things that help you because it's the right pace for the season you're in. It's the right pace for what you're going through. And so if you're running a 200, if you're in the middle of something right now and it's intense, then you may need a pace that's really fast and frantic. But if you're kind of in, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon life. If you're in kind of some other seasons, you don't want to be just going crazy because you're going to run out, you're going to burn out. Again, there's nothing wrong with wanting to run the race in order to win. There's nothing wrong with wanting to do life in a way that'll help you be successful, prosperous, help you be fulfilled. But you need to know the difference between a pace that helps you win a race and a pace that burns you out. Between a pace that grows your business and a pace that ruins your family. Between a pace that allows you to provide and a pace that keeps you from church life. Yeah, I went there. Pacing. So for the next 3 weeks, we're going to lead into the summer with a series called Pace Yourself. What to do when life gets too frantic for you, or life becomes too frantic for you. Pace yourself. Pace yourself. God's been talking to me about this. We're going to read Luke 10:38-42. Quickly, for the sake of time. And then we're going to jump into all the verses here and use this as the springboard for what I'm going to share today. It says this in Luke 10:38-42 in the NASB. Now as they were traveling along, he entered a village, and the woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. And she had a sister called Mary, who was also seated at the Lord's feet and was listening to his word. But Martha was distracted. Look at somebody and say, distracted. With all her preparations. And she came up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do the serving by myself? Then tell her to help me. But the Lord answered and said to her, Martha, 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 right? And Martha, Martha, that's where it started. You are worried and distracted by many things. But only one thing is necessary for Mary. She has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away from her. So here we have an account of a time where Jesus has been sending out the 72 and 2 by 2, and they've been going around, and God's been moving, and they've been having victories and healings and different things, and he's talking to them, and they're walking through on their journey, and this lady named Martha comes and says, hey, Jesus, can you come over to my house? They were probably hungry. They were probably a little tired, so Jesus had some time to come over to Martha's house and invited her over. So we find out that it's Martha's house, and then in there's his sister Mary that's with her. And so many of you know when somebody's coming over, I referenced this before, but when somebody's coming over, you got to get the house ready. Right? We talked about the grit and the glitz and how, you make the house look like it never is because someone's coming over and you want them to think you're always that clean. Right? There's no dust in the corners, and so you do it really well. This is Martha. She's invited Jesus over, and we'll see here, maybe she didn't fully think it out, or maybe she thought Mary was going to do something, but Martha's like, come on over, Jesus. So Martha's role in this to her was to serve and prepare. And then we see Mary just sitting there at Jesus' feet listening. And so Mary thinks her role is to sit and listen. But there's importance there of roles. I invited Jake over this last week. Hey, Jake. Because recently I found out he was an Edmonton Oilers fan, and they're in the playoffs. They were in the playoffs. They had been in the playoffs, past tense. And so I was like, man, that'd be great. I get into playoff hockey, and it was a Canadian team, so I really get into it as it gets further and further. And then I'd said, I don't know, a couple weeks ago probably, and then all of a sudden I was like, hey, Jake, I saw him last Sunday, and I'm like, we got to get a game in because I don't know if they're going to even make it past 4 games. So the only way, because they were down 3-0 to Colorado, so the only way we're going to get to watch them together is it's going to be Monday, because that was it. So it was kind of last minute, because we thought if they lose, we won't have a chance to do this. And so he was going to come over Monday, so it was a little last minute. So I told my kids, I said, guys, we didn't do our chore day on Saturday. I forget why. It was a busy day. And so I said, when you get home, we're going to have to do a lot of cleaning because Jake's coming over. And so we all have specific chores and roles. I was saying, like, I'm going to come, and I asked Nicole, can you get the buns? Because I forgot to get buns, and we were going to do hamburgers and hot dogs and French fries. And so I said, can you get the buns? Aylin was actually going to do dishes, which I usually do, and then I was going to do sinks. Nicole ended up doing one sink. Che does the toilets. Dory does the dusting. So we all have roles. And so when we got home, and I was a little bit later than I expected, but I came home, all the roles were being done. Everything was getting done, and it was really good. And I cleaned the upstairs sink, and then Jake came over, and I started making. My job was to cook everything, clean everything after. And so we were doing that. And because they were all doing the roles, there was a time once it was done that I got to sit down with Jake, and my role was to sit with Jake and hang out and watch the game. And my kids' role was to get out of the way, which they didn't do well. But you know that. You got this time, someone's over, you're watching playoff game, move. It's time to watch the game. Can I get an amen, Alex? But it only worked because everyone did their role. And we all have roles in life. That you're responsible for. It could be your friend. That could be a role you have. It could be boss. It could be employee, student, parent. You could be a child. That could be a role. Teenager, that's a role. Maybe you're an influencer. Any influencers? Whatever that means. Motivational speakers. I'm seeing a guy back there who's kind of like that. That's a new thing. I'm an influencer. Like, I actually saw that on a title. Like, It was some competition where they tell you, like singing competition. It was like, what are they? And they're like, we're influencers. And I'm like, oh, man. So maybe you're an influencer, maybe you're a motivational speaker, maybe your role is an evangelist, a pastor, a teacher. A role is just the duty or use that someone or something usually has or is expected to have. It's the responsibilities, the thing on your plate that you have to do. So now as lead pastor, there's this, our charitable organization, City Center Community Renewal Initiatives, there's kind of overseeing of that, and we have City Center Church, we have Westdale Christian School, there's Pathways Early Learning Center, and Mission 20. Those are all specific roles, and Pastor Jim knows this, and as he's been passing it on to me, that's a lot of roles to cover. And that's not including some of the things like communication. That's what I'm doing today, preparing for preaching, vision casting, going over mission and values and different things with people on your team, and some of the practical things that I have to do here in my role here. And that's just the work side. Then there's father, then there's husband, then there's friend, then there's brother, then there's son. Leader, church attender, Jesus follower myself. So all these roles can challenge us and make it difficult to find the right pace, especially if they all feel simultaneously happening. I got this one, and now this one, and it's like frantic. And you go around and you're like, well, Mary's not helping me. What, right? And you can feel that pressure from society and different things where, our kids, they do a lot. I said I was never going to be that parent driving them around everywhere, and I'm starting to become that parent that's driving, not as much as others, but driving them around. And so we have to manage the tension around that, of giving our kids opportunities to develop, but also giving them opportunities to just be together as a family, to be at church. And so far, we've had favor because people have adjusted their schedules around so we can be here. It's amazing when you let them know this is a priority. They actually called us, and Aylin's really big into dance, and texted Nicole and said, when are the nights she has teens and potentially church? Because they wanted to make sure they scheduled all her stuff around our church. Favor. Because they said, we love your family. But the pace can come in, and you're trying to navigate all that and figure out that, football and music, and what do we put them in, and it's crazy. And so you go, my role as a parent is to provide every opportunity for my kids. Or maybe you're thinking, my role is to make as much money so I can purchase those things that I didn't have growing up and I can provide for my family and my kids. Maybe you think, my role is to fulfill my partner or spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend's every dream and desire I want to be for them like I didn't see modeled when I grew up. My role is to be the best friend anyone's ever had because I had some lousy friends, and so you think that's your role. Maybe you think your role is to look a certain way. My role is to become famous on social media. My role is all this, and you're constantly be getting told through commercials and advertising and socials what it should look like. And it's expanding and adjusting. And so we're talking about pace yourself. And so in order to learn how to pace yourself, this is what I want to say, and I believe God's saying to us, and I'm going to show you like what he said to me, but I go through these quickly. In order to learn how to pace yourself, you need to learn to slow your roll, R-O-L-E. Slow your roll. So I'm going to show you today 6 ways to slow your roll. I'm going to have to go quicker than I planned. Pace myself, that's really good. No, I'm going to slow my roll today, and we're going to take time. I'm going to tell you at the end, I'll give you kind of like a preview. Slow isn't just to do a speed, tempo, okay? But 6 ways you need to slow your roll. Luke 10:38. In the NASB, we're going to break apart this story with Mary and Martha. Everyone good? Nudge your neighbor and say, wake up. Here we go. Hey, hi everyone online. Georgia, we will pray for your city, CU. I don't know what CU is. Does anyone city? But we will pray. Harrison's watching. Thank you, Harrison. Glorianne. I want to say welcome to everybody. Visiting from Esther Hazy, thank you, Nicole. We appreciate you watching. Leah's always here every week. We love you guys. We appreciate you for joining in as a church family. All right, Luke 10:38. Now as they were traveling along, he entered, being Jesus, entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Number 1, for 6 ways to slow your roll. You need to have a pace that allows space for you to be hospitable. You need to have a pace. You're going to hear me use the word space a lot, because as we go through this in 2 weeks especially, I'm going to talk about Sabbath and margin. right? So you're going to hear this idea of space, but you need to have a pace that allows space for you to be hospitable. Mary welcomed Jesus into her home. Now we find out maybe she didn't fully realize the cost of that, but at least Martha thought, I got some space in my life to be hospitable. Listen, Christian especially, you don't get a pass on this because Jesus tells us how we should do this by loving our neighbors and being giving. We need to have space in our lives in order to be hospitable to those around us. To who? To your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. Who's your neighbor? Anybody in your area or sphere of influence. So that could be the one you live beside, but that could be the person you work out at the gym with. That could especially be someone you go to church with. You need to have space in your pace that allows you time to be hospitable. To welcome someone over into that. If it's too frantic, if it's too crazy that you're always saying no to every opportunity, guess what? You need to rearrange your pace. Martha had time to welcome Jesus into her home. If your mentality has no space for hospitality, you may need to slow your... Thank you. That's yes. You may need to slow your... Oh, this side of the room is doing really good right now. Let's all join. You may need to slow your... There we go. Yes. So if your mentality has no space for hospitality, you may need to rearrange and go, my role, the things I'm taking on might be too much. See, I just want to say, if you don't have space to be hospitable in your finances, listen. If you don't have space to be hospitable in your finances, you may need to change the pace of your spending. I have to get some in every service, right? Some of those ones that kind of hurt. How about this? If you don't have space to be hospitable with your time, you may need to change the pace of your planning. Now, I understand everybody's in different seasons. Remember, we talked about the 200 versus the 20 kilometer. If you've got 17 kids and you're 30 years old, your pacing for some of this is going to be a little different. Your time available is different than the single person. So, you may be new in your journey, and you may be just starting out of university, and you got student loans, and you're trying to figure out money. Your ability to be financially hospitable may be limited. And so you might not be doing it as an amount, but you can do it as a heart attitude. I remember when my wife and I were working at schools in the city, and I think we both had jobs, or you working here and I had it, and we had some good money, and we would bless people. We were hospitable with our finances. We walked up, and I think we blessed somebody with about $1,000 worth of clothes. We took them out shopping and said, we just want to bless you. And then we came and worked at the church. I had to struggle with that because I went, God, we don't have the financial ability to do as much, but God said, but you can be hospitable in other ways. And God also said this, I believe he said, the time you're sowing, your willingness to come in and work and take the pay cut is a generosity. It's a generosity giving towards it. So we can get into that another time, but we weren't able to do it, but we could still be hospitable in other ways. And let me be honest, I've had to work at this. I am not naturally hospitable. Because much of my job, whether it was teaching to start with, and now this, deals with people. And when you've dealt with people all day, the last thing you want to do is come home and do something with people. When you've been working around the same people all day, and then we're like, hey, let's get together as a leader team, and we're going to just like it. And I'm like, I don't want to be around everybody I've been around all the time. Maury's like, somebody hears me, right? He's in the back just having a revelation and God encounter back there. So I've had to work at being strategic about it and saying yes when I don't always feel like it. Do you know, I think I could share this. I've shared this, Alana. Man, I'm so off notes. We're going to slow our roll today. Alana knows this, right? Her first step into this church was... me being willing to be hospitable. That's honestly what it was. And I think it was, her husband was away. He does a lot with golf, and he's traveling. And there was a moment where I just felt led. I said, Nicole, phone her up and say, we'll take care of her kids. Is that what it was? And it was in a moment that of crisis, or kind of where it ministered to her so much that it broke something and was the opening thing to her being in the booth and being, overseeing visual department and just being here faithful. But it took me being able to step back, because I didn't want, trust me, I didn't want kids over. I want my time away. But I said, I'm going to be hospitable. There needs to be space. And if you can't do it, you need to create space in order to be hospitable, because it opens doors. So parents, listen, sometimes we think we don't have enough time. Oh, no, that's the next point. I'm getting ahead of myself. Number 2, let's go there. Say, Pastor Derek, you got to hurry. Slowly. Say, Pastor Derek, pace yourself. Come on. Sheila's there. Welcome. I love the word. I'm so off. The presence of God is good in here today. I'm having myself a good time. Luke 10:39, number 2. I'll read the verse and then give you the second thing. 6 ways you need to slow your roll. And she had a sister, continuing the story, called Mary, who was seated at the Lord's feet and was listening to his word. Number 2, you need to have a pace that allows space for you to listen. We're going to get to the sitting later. But the point I wanted to put with that verse is she sat and listened. You need to have space in your pace that allows you to listen. Mary said her role was to listen to Jesus' word. She obviously made space in her pace for that day to just sit and do that. I'd like to point out part of the anatomy of our faces, right? We got one nose, got 2 eyes, we got 2 ears, and how many mouths? How many mouths? I think some of us feel like we got 5 mouths, right? But we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, because I think we're supposed to listen twice as much as we talk. I think we're supposed to hear twice as much as be heard. And I really got to work on this, because I get excited and I want to jump in and say stuff. And you can tell people that in this last season, I've tried to get better at listening. Don't say anything, babe. Don't say anything. And really, not just listen, but listen. When's the last time we just sat and listened? You're doing it now, but are you listening? It feels like it is. But do we parents, do we sit and listen to what our kids are saying? Really listen? Or do we just say, no, we do it this way, this way? Do we have our devices and say, yeah, oh, that's good? Spouses, relationships, are we at the restaurant there but not listening? When's the last time we sat at Jesus' feet and listened? Church members, people at City Center Church or whatever level you're coming, you don't have enough space to come and listen on a Sunday in person. Again, not judging, but maybe we got a pace now that's created that we don't have that space to come and listen. Christian, we don't have enough space to come and listen. That's what we were doing at the beginning of this service. At the end of praise and worship, as we transition, we're taking time to listen. I gave the challenge a few weeks ago at the end of my message about Jesus. Remember, he was 40 days in the wilderness, and what did I ask everyone to do? Does anyone remember? That's perfect. What was the challenge of that? Because we're going to come back to it. I know people don't hear it the first time. They got to hear it over and over. I said, Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness. I believe God's wanting us to spend 40 minutes in a wilderness every week. And a wilderness being without the amenities of life. Put the phones away, put the distractions away, 40 minutes. I really believe, and I'm mentioning it again, take time, 40 minutes a week. Maybe you do 4 hours, maybe you do 40 hours. You're already there, good. Pat yourself on the back and say, I got this. Okay? But some of us, 40 minutes, I'm saying non-distracted, devices go away. To put yourself in a wilderness, to be able to just sit, meditate on Scripture, calm your mind and listen. Some of you, myself included, it's going to be really hard. You know why? Because we're so used to taking in things with our senses all the time. We can't even do a number 2 on the toilet now without being hooked to our devices. Come on, can I get a witness? Huh? Pace yourself. So, first thing, slow your roll. You have to have a pace that allows space for you to be hospitable. Second thing, to listen. Number 3, Luke 10:40 in the beginning here. It says this, but Martha was distracted with all her preparations, at the translations use serving. Number 3, you need to have a pace that allows space for what is important. I put it like this specifically. For what is important. I could have talked specifically about distractions, but I thought you need to have a pace that allows space for what is important. It says Martha was distracted with all her preparations. We're going to get into this in a few points, but I do want to touch on it. I don't think it was her preparations that was the issue. It was that she was distracted by it. I know you're writing points, but that was a good point to know. It wasn't that Martha was serving and preparing. It was that she was distracted by it. It was taking up space in her mind. The word distracted means this, to be driven around mentally. Come on. Driven. Do you have something driving your mind? You might have it right now. It's gone from first gear to second gear to third. You're ramping up, right? And it just goes. Martha was driven around in her mind with the preparations, with the serving, what was going on. It means this, to be overoccupied. Listen, if our minds don't have some space to just listen, to take what's important, they'll get overoccupied, they'll be driven, and it'll be constant. And some of us like to really drive our minds. In all the gears, we're going up, revving the RPMs to the top on them. But you need to have a pace that allows space for what's important. How many times does something take up space in our minds? Things that we think are urgent and emergent and emergencies, and they're actually distractions keeping us from thinking about or doing what's actually important. Come on, look at someone and say, stop distracting me. Now that was a distraction. I set you up for that, sorry. See, people come with you with distractions all the time. You're listening to the service, someone sends you a text, distraction, right? Taking up space in your mind of something that might not be as important. Oftentimes, distractions come in the form of well-meaning friends. It's not just people you don't like. Can I give you a helpful hint? I'll move on. I won't sit on this. This has been a practice of mine in the last little bit, but just because it is someone's emergency does not make it your urgency. Just because it's someone's emergency does not make it your urgency. Listen, most of what finds its way to my plate these days, somebody feels like it's emergency. Or it's like, what do we do about this? What do you think about this? And people are high, emergency to it. But if I don't leave space for what's important, I'll be running around putting out fires like a chicken with my head cut off, going here, here, and here. Can I let you in on a little secret? And maybe this has happened to you. I keep my schedule for work over there in my office written down. I actually haven't digitalized it, which is quite crazy. But you know why I don't? Because if somebody comes up to me away from work, or like Sunday here, and they say, hey, can you do this? Because sometimes somebody will get an idea and they're like, this is important. Like I get people asking, hey, can you marry us next week? Right? And so I could be like, no, but what I say is, hey, why don't you send me an email? My schedule's across the street. I'll look at it and see what we can do about it. And you know what happens with most requests that they come in and they feel like they're emergency and they're just, like that? 80 to 90% of people don't ever send the email. It works a lot of that out because it's not actually that important. In the moment it is. And so their emergency tries to become my urgency, and then you go, oh, I got to do this and this. And so if you've had that happen, you'll hear me say, email me. Send it to an email. I can look at it at the right time, look at my schedule, and do it. If not, I'll have all these things coming from everywhere, and before I know it, I'll be just responding to what's urgent instead of what's important. So you need to create space in your pace for what's important. I had something else I was going to say just on that, but I'm going to move on for the sake of time. So number 4. The first one is 6 ways to slow your roll. You need to have a space in your pace for being hospitable. The second one is you need to have space in your pace to listen. The third one is space in your pace for what's important. Number 4. Luke 10, the second half of verse 40 says this, and she came up to him. Remember, Martha's distracted with all her preparations, and she comes up to Jesus in a huff. Jesus, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the serving by myself? Has anyone ever huffed their way up to Pastor Jim or Kathy and said, do you not care? And then you've laid it out that this person is doing this or they're doing that, right? They've left me to do this or they're doing this. I'm waiting for you to huff up to me, so huff away. I'm not thinking of anybody. Please don't come talk to us. I'm not saying that. But she's saying, you left me to do all the serving by myself. And then she goes this, then tell her to help me. Number 4, you need to have a pace that has space for grace. See, Martha's pretty upset that Mary, listen, I'll let you write that, then I'll come to it. Take a few minutes, I'll drink, write that down. And then I'll say this because I want you listening. I'm slowing my roll. When you're done writing it, you can look up at me. I'll wait for eyes. See you, Jake, Dennis, Verona. A little slower in this area over here. Oh, no, Murray's still writing on manuscript paper. He's got a scroll. The ink pads. Anyways. All right. So you need to have a pace that has space for grace. Listen, Martha is pretty upset that Mary's not doing what she thinks she should be doing. Jesus, Lord, do you not see she's not helping me? See, Mary's not doing it the way Martha thinks she should be doing it. Mary's not thinking the way Martha thinks. Mary is not seeing what is important like Martha sees what's important. And so Mary's saying, hey, Jesus, you got to do something about this. Don't you care? See, listen, I don't know, but maybe you've been in a place where you have been getting upset at others for not doing what you think they should be doing. That happens to us as leaders too. I got to work on this. You're like, why aren't they? Why are they just doing this? But maybe you get upset because someone's not doing what you think they should be doing. They're not serving like you're serving. Listen, Mary's just sitting here and I'm doing all the work, and so they're not serving the way you think they should be serving. Everyone should see it the way you see it. Everyone should do it the way you do it. Everyone should think the way you do. Everyone should be voting the way you vote. Everyone should have handled church things in COVID like you would have handled church things in COVID. Right? Jesus, don't they know they're doing it wrong? Because they're not doing it like my rule says I should do it. They're doing it a different way. What's going on? Jesus, tell them that they're wrong. That's what Martha's saying. She's wrong. I'm right. This is the role. Mary's got it wrong. See, Martha didn't have a lot of space in her pace for grace. Because guess what? Like I said at the beginning, everyone could be at a different place in their life, so their pace may be different. And so Martha had no space in her routines to give grace to Mary for where she was at. And she was saying, why isn't it like this? They should be like this. See, we need to have space in our pace for people to have grace, because there's going to be a time, someone listen, where you're not going to be doing something right, where maybe your role is not going to be, you're going through something, and you're going to need someone to give grace to you for that. Jesus, do you not see that Mary is not doing her role properly? She should be helping me. She should be doing it at the pace I'm doing it. Don't you care that this is going on? How many times have we said to God, don't you care what's going on? How many times have we wondered if others care what's going on? Why? Because they're not doing it the way you do it. They're not thinking the way you think. Jesus, tell Mary she needs to help me. Jesus, tell them they're wrong. Jesus, show them the error of their ways. Jesus, just make everyone see how right I am. Jesus, get them to pace themselves like I'm pacing myself. I want to pray this a lot. God, that people would just go after it and pace themselves like, I'm willing to. But there's grace for that. Notice this. This is what I want to point out. I got to keep moving. You guys are listening so well. Jesus did not go up to Martha and say, would you look at that? Martha, you're doing all the work and Mary's just sitting there. Would you look at that? He also didn't go up and say to Mary, would you look at that? Martha's just busy serving, and I'm so glad you're sitting here listening. See, I don't think Jesus answered Martha the way he did just because she was serving. Because I don't think Jesus would have said anything to either of them if Martha didn't pipe up and say, Jesus, look what's going on. See, I don't think Jesus answered Martha the way he did just because she was serving. Because guess what? You need people to serve and prepare in order for Jesus to come. Right? So the issue isn't serving and praying. I'm not telling everyone stop serving, stop doing everything, get lazy, just sit there and wait. Because you need people to serve or Jesus can't come over. We need people to serve in the church or ministry can't take place, equipping can't take place, people can't get touched by Jesus who are watching online and all that. So that happens. So I don't think Jesus answered Martha that way just because she was serving. I think Jesus answered Martha that way because she was loathing. You guys know what loathing means? Loathing is this. It means to dislike greatly. It means disgust. It means a strong feeling or grating towards someone or something. She was not impressed with Mary. See, Jesus was addressing the issue that it was distracting her mind. It was over-occupying her mind because she was complaining about the situations that she was in. And he said, Mary, or he said, Martha, come on, which we'll get to. And so maybe we've said things like this, why am I doing all the work? Maybe you said that at the church here. I've thought that. Why doesn't my partner do this for me? Why doesn't my spouse or my boyfriend, girlfriend do this for me? Why aren't they helping me like they should? Why don't they serve in the nursery? Why don't they? Listen, I put this as an aside, but if you loathe your role in serving, you're going to hinder your blessing. If you loathe your role in serving, and how is it? Are you complaining? Gosh. You're going to hinder your blessing. So Jesus is saying, Martha, come on. See, Martha saw her pace as a place to complain instead of a place for God's grace. Martha saw her pace as a place to complain instead of a place for God's grace. So whatever the role, our pace should always allow space for grace. All right, I got to move on. I know you're writing, so you're going to get to write some more. I'll read the verse first, then you can write this. Luke 10:41. But the Lord answered and said to her, Martha, 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 you are worried and distracted by many things. Now he adds something else. Not only is she distracted, but now she's worried. It's over-occupied. See the progression? It over-occupies your mind. You start dwelling on it too much, and then it leads you into worry. She's saying, Martha, Martha, Martha. You are just worried and distracted. Here's number 5. You need to have a pace that allows space to keep you from worrying. See, Martha was not only distracted by her pace, she began to worry about everything around it. Will I get to the appetizers? Will the food be ready? Is the main meal going to be good? Will everything be ready? Will I have the kitchen to straighten? Will I got all this? And Jesus looked at Martha and said, Martha, 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 slow your... Thank you. Good. Slow your... One more time. Can you guys write notes and say the word at the same time, some of you? Slow your... Hey, you can. Well done. Is anybody saying slow your roll online? Let's see. Chris is watching. Sheila's there. Did anyone say anything to me? All right. Slow your roll. That's what Jesus said to Martha. If your pace creates worry, stress, and anxiety, your pace needs some space. Now, I get it. For those of you who worry and maybe have to deal with things in your mind, sometimes space is the last thing you need. Anyone? Because then it's just more things to think about. But if we're being honest with yourself, it's kind of what I said at the beginning. At some point, you got to get to a place in your life where you say, you know what, I either believe God can help me with this or he can't. And we have God in our life to help us with this. And so to be able to worry and things like that, you don't solve problems by worrying about them more. Very few. The scripture puts it this way. He says, do not worry about what you eat, what you'll drink. God takes care of it. And he says this, how can you add 1 cubit to your stature by worrying? What I think they also mean isn't just a height thing physically, but he's saying, how many of you have actually added growth to your life by worrying? You never grow by worrying. And so he's saying you can't add any growth to your life by worrying. And so instead, there's a verse that says, cast all your cares, cast all your anxieties, cast all your worry onto Jesus because he cares for you. Someone needs to get a hold of that this morning. See, we try to worry our way into solutions, but all it does, and watch, we like to do this, I like to do this, we busy ourselves like Martha, doing things so that our minds are busy with something else, so that if we're worried or we're stressed about something, we'll replace it with being busy or a pace that's frantic, so we don't have to think about it, but all that does is accelerate it or put it on top of each other so that when the time comes, it's I can't think of the word anyways, it's built up rather than dealt with, and then when you slow down, you have all of that sitting there. Can't think of the word. Escapes me. And so you keep busy from not being worried. But you need to find space in your pace to not worry. If you're worried about your relationship, you may need to find some space in your pace to go out with your spouse. When's the last time there's been space in your pace to develop that relationship? You may need to take some space in your pace to be with your kids. Just be with them. Or maybe to not be with your kids if you need the break. Hey, that's just as much too. Maybe you don't need to take that overtime. Maybe you need to downsize your house. Maybe you need to go to therapy. Maybe you need to read some more. You need to find space in your pace to keep you from worrying. As a Christian, if you're a Christian, you need to find a way to create space in your pace to cast your worry. That's why, remember, sitting there, worship nights, things like that. You need to find space in your pace to cast your worry. All right, last one. You guys have been listening. I got to wrap up. Luke 10:42, but only one thing is necessary, Jesus is talking to Martha. For Mary has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away from her. Number 6, you need to have a pace that allows space to choose the good part. What's the good part? Sitting at Jesus' feet. Sitting at Jesus' feet. When's the last time you just sat at Jesus' feet and listened? With nothing around. No distractions, no phones. For me, even no music potentially, and just listened. Really listened, where you slowed your objections, your loathing, your complaints, maybe even in your prayers and your needs, and you just sat and listened. This one's on me. I'm making myself accountable. My wife's going to hold me accountable. When is the last time, if you have a family, we're coming up to Father's Day, you're a leader in your home, or maybe you're a single parent, you lead your home. When's the last time you just created space and the pace for you and your family to sit at Jesus' feet and listen? Life gets away from us. See, you may need to slow your role, what you're responsible for. You may need to adjust how much your kids are doing. You may need to not take that extra work. You may need to say no to that friend, no to that committee. You may need to put that video controller down, stop watching YouTube, put your phone down, turn the TV or computer off. Because I heard God say to me, and this is tied into just pacing. As a leader of the church, Pastor Jim would know this, the Mary and Martha thing, figuring out the pacing on when it's time to serve and when it's time to sit is really difficult at times. When it's time to go after and serve our community, and when it's time to pull back and say, we just need to sit. But I heard God say to me, we've had a busy season or a full season serving, and we impact our community, and you guys do it amazingly. But we're coming up to summer where we roll it back a little bit, and I struggle with that sometimes, but I heard God say to me, slow. 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 Why? Because I believe we need to take a moment to check our pace, because I believe God's got some things coming up in the fall that we're going to make sure we've refreshed, we've recuperated, we've slowed down a little bit. And so this summer, as we lead into it, I felt it important to tell you all, it's okay to be slow. I had to tell myself this, because as a pastor, as a minister, you just want to go. We can do more. We can do that. But it's okay to be slow. Listen, I want to say this, though, and I'm going to end. Music team, come on up. Slow is not a speed or just a speed. Okay, so I'm not saying we're going to stop completely living, but we are Coming into July, us groups are going to slow down. Teens have stopped. Some other things, prayer, again, there might be some things happening, but it's purposeful. It's not just to say we don't want to do it. It's because we want to give people time to be able to pull back and do what I'm going to tell you here, what slow means in a little bit. But I want to say this. Slow isn't a speed. Watch, slow is this. If you're driving on a highway, anyone drove in BC in the mountains? Right? And you're going, and the hills and the turns and the different things that you have in BC are immensely different than what you have in Saskatoon. But they have this, you'll be going 100, and then all of a sudden they'll have a little thing with usually a yellowy orange sign that has a little like arrow, like a curve coming ahead, or some squigglies, and then it'll have a speed underneath. And it's in that color. Did you know if it's in the orange or yellow color, it's a suggested speed and you actually don't have to follow it? It is. So now some of you have got free, but it's not. They're just saying, but what they're saying, watch this. What they're saying is the road that is ahead is going to get a little curvy. There's going to be some things. Maybe there's going to be some loose gravel. Maybe there's a sharp drop off. And in order to be safe, in order to make sure you get through, the pace at which you're doing this needs to slow. And it gives you a warning sign. And at that point, you have a choice whether you're going to follow it or not. You know what I've learned? When I'm in the mountains in BC and they give me a suggested speed, I basically better follow that speed. Because those curves are something. And if I try to do it, sometimes I kind of miss it. And if my wife's sleeping on the side and all of a sudden you start hitting that curve at 100, you're like, I got to slow down because you start feeling it. You know what else I've learned? If you're going from BC back into Saskatchewan, you also get these things that have the little curve sign and they say slow. You can actually speed up and have no problems doing those curves in Saskatchewan. It's totally different. I don't know who marks those slow speeds, but there's no reason they should be marked slow, especially when you've come from BC. But what they are is warning signs about what's coming up ahead. And you have a choice whether or not you're going to heed them. Listen, this is the point I want to make, and I don't want you to forget this. Slow is not a speed, it is a submission. Say that again. Slow is not a speed, it is a submission in the context that I'm saying. See, you could be going 100 miles an hour, and that could be slow because for the season that you're in, that's what God's directing you to do. You could be going 5 miles an hour, and maybe your road's like this, and it's bumpy, and you're breaking the chassis of your car, and because you're going too fast for the season or the pace that you should be going. So slow is not a speed; it's a submission. Listen, 5 miles an hour. I don't know why I'm in miles. We're doing American here. 5 kilometers an hour is 5 kilometers too fast if it's not submitted to the pace God has for your life. 100 miles an hour is 100 miles or kilometers too slow if it's not submitted to the pace God has for your life. Slow is not a speed, it's a submission. So here's the challenge, and I'm done. This summer, you and I, we need to take some time to go slow. But let me tell you what slow is. S.L.O.W. You need to take some time to sit. You need to take some time to listen. You need to take some time to obey. And you need to take some time to worship. S-L-O-W. Sit. Remember? Mary sat and listened. And I put this, obey and be open. What's God telling you? What's the pace God wants you to do? But we're going to do this, sit and obey and then worship. And so God was talking about, we had a worship night. You felt it in praise and worship this morning. I don't know how we're fully going to regulate some of this, but I'm preaching once in July and once in August. And during those Sundays, we are going to focus on worship. Because I'm leading music, so I can just do that. And I don't know if we're going to have 2 people or 10 people, but it's okay because we're going to go slow. So that'll be the focus of those Sundays. We may have a few other people. I may talk and see if we can do along these ideas. But I really feel like God's saying, it's time this season, this summer, no matter where you're at, you need to be able to take time to sit, listen, obey and be open, and worship. Slow your go to God and say, sit, listen, what do you want me to do? And worship Him. And God is going to rearrange some of the pace and give you energy and then gear us up for the fall. But I really felt like God saying, slow your roll this summer. Sit, listen, obey, and worship. All right, that's all I have, man. You guys listened and sat. We'll see if you obey. It's not really obey.